This is Beyond the Mirror, The Curse of Bloody Mary, written by Galen Pierce Tate, read for you by 11 Labs AI text-to-speech, using the classic male voice provided by ChatGPT and 11 Labs. Chapter 3, Into the Mirror. The school hallway felt suffocating, the walls closing in around Lena as she walked to her locker. Every movement, every sound seemed too loud, too sharp, as if the world was pushing down on her. Conversations blurred into a static hum, faces passing by like strangers, though these were people she had known for years. It was as if everything normal had turned alien. Lena's stomach twisted as she grabbed her books, her hands trembling slightly. The tension from the conversation with Detective Williams still clung to her like a heavy fog. Whatever this is, it's not finished with you yet. She hadn't slept much since then. The text from Emma's phone lingered in her mind, a constant reminder that something was watching, waiting. She kept her eyes down when she passed the bathroom mirrors at home, careful not to catch her reflection for too long, just in case she saw something, someone she didn't want to see. Noah was supposed to meet her after first period, but Lena hadn't seen Rachel all morning. She couldn't help but worry, especially after Rachel's breakdown at the cafe. If Rachel had been seeing things in her mirrors too, then what if she wasn't handling it as well? Lena closed her locker, her heart heavy, and turned toward the cafeteria. But before she could take a step, she saw Rachel, and Rachel didn't look right. She was standing at the end of the hallway, near the big windows that overlooked the courtyard. Her face was pale, almost gray, her eyes wide and hollow as she glared into the glass. Her breathing was quick, shallow, and her hands were shaking violently at her sides. She looked frozen, paralyzed, her gaze locked on something in the window. Lena's stomach dropped. "Rachel?" Lena called, hurrying toward her. The noise in the hallway felt distant now, like the world was tilting. The closer she got, the more she could feel the fear radiating from Rachel, like a dark aura wrapping around her. Rachel didn't move. She didn't even flinch at Lena's voice. She just kept staring at the window, her body trembling. Lena reached her, grabbing her arm gently. "Rachel, what's wrong? What do you see?" Rachel's eyes didn't move from the glass. Her lips were trembling, barely moving as she whispered, "She's in there." Lena's blood ran cold. "Who?" Lena whispered, even though she already knew. Her eyes drifted to the window, her heart racing as she searched the reflection. But all she saw was the courtyard outside, the tall trees swaying gently in the wind, the students walking past, backpacks slung over their shoulders. Normal life going on as usual. Except for Rachel, whose eyes were fixed on the window, her voice barely a breath. "Bloody Mary!" Lena's heart thudded painfully in her chest. "Rachel, no, there's nothing there," she insisted, squeezing Rachel's arm a little tighter. "It's just a window. It's your mind playing tricks on you." Rachel's body trembled, her breath coming in shallow gasps. "No, she's there. She's right there, watching me." Lena glanced around, panic rising. Students were passing by, some giving them curious looks, but most of them paid no attention. Lena needed to get Rachel away from the window before she completely broke down. "Come on," Lena said, trying to keep her voice calm. "Let's get out of here. We can go to the nurse or outside, wherever you want. Just come with me." Rachel shook her head violently, her wide eyes still glued to the window. "I can't move. She'll follow me." Lena's heart clenched. She'd never seen Rachel like this, not even when she had first confided in her about the nightmares. This was different, worse. This was fear taking over, controlling her. Lena had to get her out of here, but how could she convince her to move if she was too terrified to look away? "Rachel," Lena said, her voice soft but firm. "I'm here. I won't let her follow you, I promise. But you have to move, please." Rachel's breath hitched, her trembling growing more intense. Her eyes flickered for a brief second, finally breaking away from the window to look at Lena. And that's when Rachel collapsed. It happened so fast, Lena barely had time to react. One moment, Rachel was standing, her body rigid with fear. The next, her legs buckled beneath her, her knees hitting the hard tile floor with a sickening thud. Lena reached out, catching her just before she crumpled to the ground, her body limp in Lena's arms. "Rachel!" Lena gasped, kneeling beside her, panic flooding her chest. Rachel's eyes were closed, her face pale, her breathing shallow and rapid. People were starting to notice now. Students stopped in their tracks, murmuring to each other, a small crowd forming around them. "Someone get the nurse," Lena shouted, her voice shaking as she cradled Rachel's head in her lap. She looked around, desperate for help, but the faces staring back at her were blank, shocked. Finally, a teacher rushed forward, pushing through the crowd. "What happened?" she demanded, her voice sharp as she knelt beside them. "I don't know," Lena stammered, her heart pounding in her ears. She fainted." The teacher's face softened as she reached out to check Rachel's pulse. "She's breathing. Just stay calm. The nurse is on her way." Lena nodded numbly, but her mind was spinning. She looked up at the window, where Rachel had been staring, her skin crawling with dread. Her own reflection stared back at her, ghostly pale in the glass, surrounded by the faint outlines of students in the hallway, but no one else. No shadowy figure, no dark-eyed woman. Bloody Mary wasn't there. But that didn't mean she wasn't real. Lena waited outside the nurse's office, her legs bouncing anxiously as she sat in the hallway. Noah showed up not long after, his face drawn with worry as he rushed over to her. "Where is she?" he asked, his voice breathless. "Inside," Lena said quietly, nodding toward the door. "She fainted. I think it was another panic attack." Noah rubbed the back of his neck, pacing in front of her. "Jesus, I knew she wasn't handling things well, but this—" "It's getting worse," Lena whispered. "She saw something, Noah, in the window. She said Bloody Mary was watching her." Noah stopped pacing, his eyes narrowing. "But she wasn't, right? I mean, you didn't see anything." Lena shook her head, her hands trembling in her lap. "No, but that doesn't mean she wasn't there. What if Rachel's seeing her because she's next, like Emma?" Noah's face paled at the mention of Emma's name, and he let out a slow, shaky breath. "Lena, maybe Rachel's I don't know, she's panicking. I'm not saying what we saw wasn't real, but we're all on edge right now. Maybe it's just getting to her head." "That's what scares me," Lena whispered. "What if Bloody Mary wants us to be scared? What if that's how she gets stronger?" Noah's jaw clenched, and he sat down beside her, his hands gripping the edge of the bench. "So what do we do? If Rachel's already seeing her everywhere, how do we stop this before it gets worse?" "I don't know," Lena admitted, her voice barely audible. "But if we don't figure it out soon, I'm afraid Rachel won't be the last one to break." They sat there in heavy silence, the weight of it pressing down on them like a suffocating fog. Lena could feel it, the same creeping dread that had been following her since the night Emma disappeared. It was closing in, and they were running out of time. They had to find a way to stop Bloody Mary before she took someone else. But as the minutes ticked by, Lena couldn't shake the feeling that they were already too late. Noah's skepticism. Noah had always been the rational one, the one who never let fear cloud his judgment, who approached every problem with logic, who would tell Lena to calm down and think things through. But lately, logic wasn't working. And the more Lena talked about Bloody Mary, about Rachel's breakdown, and about Emma's disappearance, the harder it became for him to dismiss it as paranoia. They left school early that day, both too shaken to focus on anything else. Rachel had been sent home, still unconscious but stable, the nurse assuring them it was probably exhaustion or stress. But Lena knew better. She'd seen the terror in Rachel's eyes before she collapsed. It wasn't just stress, it was something else. Something darker, creeping into their lives and picking them off one by one. Now they were at Noah's house, sitting in his room with the blinds closed. Lena was on the edge of the bed, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Noah stood by the window, his back turned to her, his arms crossed as he stared out at the street. "Noah," Lena said quietly, breaking the silence, "we can't ignore this anymore. It's real." Noah didn't turn around. His voice was calm but strained. I don't get it, Lena. How can it be real? We grew up hearing about Bloody Mary like it was some stupid game kids dared each other to play at sleepovers. It's just a story. How does something like that actually happen?" Lena's chest tightened, the frustration bubbling inside her. She understood why Noah was skeptical. He was trying to hold on to the world he knew, where things made sense. But that world had been shattered the moment Emma disappeared. "I don't know," Lena admitted, her voice small. "But it's happening. You saw the messages from Emma's phone. You saw how Rachel was today. We're all seeing things, Noah. This isn't in our heads." Noah turned around, his face pale, eyes shadowed with doubt and fear. "I want to believe you, I do. But if this is real, if Bloody Mary is real, then what does that mean? We're dealing with something we can't control, something we can't even explain." Lena stood up, crossing the room to stand in front of him. "Exactly. We don't know what we're dealing with, but we have to accept that it's real if we're going to stop it. I've been reading every story, every account of people who've played this game, and the patterns are the same. First they see her in mirrors, then the nightmares start, and after that they disappear." Noah's jaw tightened. "You think that's what's happening to Rachel?" "I don't know," Lena said, her voice trembling, "but I can't shake the feeling that we're next." Noah's face softened, and he placed a hand on Lena's shoulder, his touch gentle. "We'll figure this out. We'll find a way to stop it, but we need to be smart about it, okay? We can't just dive into some crazy theory without knowing what we're doing." Lena swallowed hard, nodding. "I know, but we need to do something. We can't just sit here and wait for her to come for us." Noah's hand dropped to his side, and he let out a long, shaky breath. "What if we're wrong? What if it's not Bloody Mary? What if it's something else? Something even worse?" Lena froze. The thought hadn't crossed her mind, but now that Noah said it, it sent a wave of cold fear crashing over her. "You think it could be something worse?" Noah shrugged, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know. I'm just saying maybe this isn't about Bloody Mary. Maybe we opened some other door, or triggered something else." Lena sat back down on the bed, her heart racing. She'd been so focused on the idea of Bloody Mary, on the legend, the stories. But what if Noah was right? What if they weren't dealing with just an urban legend? What if it was something older, something darker? The silence between them stretched out, heavy and suffocating, until Noah finally broke it. "Let's go over everything again," he said, pacing the room. "Step by step, maybe we're missing something." Lena nodded, grateful for the chance to focus on something concrete. She began recounting the events of the night they played the game. Emma's dare, the mirror breaking, the strange sense of being watched. Noah listened intently, his expression hard, but his skepticism was starting to fade, replaced by something else: concern. "And then the mirror shattered," Lena said, her voice lowering. "And after that, Emma was gone." Noah stopped pacing, his hands resting on the back of his desk chair. "What about the scream? You said you heard a scream that night." Lena nodded, her stomach twisting at the memory. "It wasn't any of us. I know that much. It came from somewhere else. And when the mirror broke, it felt like something was there, watching us." Noah was quiet for a long moment, his brow furrowed. "So you think whatever it was came through the mirror, like it used the game as some kind of opening?" Lena bit her lip. "Maybe. There are stories about mirrors being portals, right? If Bloody Mary or whatever spirit is tied to mirrors, then it makes sense that the mirror breaking was the start of it." Noah's skepticism softened, replaced by a look of grim understanding. "Okay, so if it came through the mirror, then it's still connected to them somehow. The reflections. That's how it's showing up, how it's watching us." "Exactly," Lena said, her voice firmer now. "That's why Rachel was so terrified at school. She wasn't seeing Bloody Mary in the window itself. She was seeing her in the reflection." Noah ran a hand over his face, his frustration growing. "But how do we stop it, Lena? If it's tied to reflections, how do we fight something we can't even see unless we look in a mirror?" Lena opened her mouth to respond, but no words came. She didn't have an answer. Not yet. All they had were theories, guesses, and fragments of old stories that didn't give them a way out. "We need more information," Noah muttered, pacing again. "There has to be something we're missing, a clue, a way to break the connection." Lena sat in silence, her mind racing. There had to be something they could do. Every story had a weakness, a way to beat the curse, to outsmart the spirit. But nothing she had read had given her that answer. Every account ended in fear, in disappearance, in silence. "I think we need to find out more about Anna," Lena said suddenly, her voice cutting through the tension. Noah stopped pacing, his eyes locking onto hers. "Anna?" "Yeah," Lena said, standing up. "The girl Detective Williams told us about. the one who disappeared 15 years ago after playing the same game. Her case, it's too similar to Emma's to be a coincidence. Noah's eyes narrowed. You think Anna's disappearance could help us figure this out? Lena nodded, her heart racing. If we can find out what happened to her, maybe we'll understand what's happening to us. And maybe we'll find a way to stop it before it's too late. Noah was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. All right, let's start with Anna. The next few hours were a blur of research. They combed through old news articles, piecing together whatever they could find about Anna's case. The deeper they dug, the more disturbing the details became. Anna had been 15 when she disappeared. Her friends had told the police they had played Bloody Mary at a sleepover, just like Lena and her group. The day after the ritual, Anna vanished. No signs of struggle, no forced entry, nothing. Just like Emma. The case had gone cold within months, but the police had followed every lead, every theory, none of them leading anywhere. The details of the case felt eerily familiar. The sense of being watched, strange reflections in mirrors, and one account from a friend who swore she saw Anna's reflection in the mirror days after she had disappeared. Look at this, Lena said, pointing to the screen. One of Anna's friends said the last time she saw her, she was staring into a mirror in her bedroom. But when her parents checked, Anna wasn't there. The mirror was broken, and her friend was too terrified to explain what she'd seen. Noah frowned. Broken mirror again, just like ours. Exactly, Lena said, her voice tense. I think that's how it starts. The mirror breaking is what lets it in. Noah leaned back, running a hand through his hair. And if we're right, then we need to figure out how to close that door. Lena's eyes darkened, a chill running down her spine. But what if we can't? Noah didn't answer. The silence between them was thick, heavy with fear and uncertainty. The more they learned, the more they realized how deep they were in, and how little time they had left. The Forgotten Girl. Lena sat on Noah's bed, her laptop perched on her knees, while Noah paced the room for what felt like the 100th time that day. The room felt heavier, as if the walls were closing in, their sense of urgency growing with every article they read about Anna's disappearance. The parallels between her case and Emma's were becoming harder to ignore, and with every passing minute, Lena felt the shadow of Bloody Mary creeping closer. I can't believe this was all swept under the rug, Noah muttered, his frustration evident as he paced. There's barely anything here. 1 or 2 articles, and then nothing. It's like the whole thing just disappeared. It's because no one believed them, Lena said, her voice quiet but tense. Detective Williams said the police thought the girls were just making up stories. No one took it seriously. Yeah, and look where that got them, Noah snapped, running a hand through his hair. Anna's gone, and so is Emma. How many others have disappeared and we just don't know about it? Lena shook her head, trying to focus. We need to figure out what happened to Anna in the days leading up to her disappearance. There's got to be something, some kind of warning sign, some detail we're missing. Noah stopped pacing and sat down beside her, his face etched with tension. What if there's nothing? What if it's already too late? Lena's heart clenched, but she couldn't let herself fall into that pit of hopelessness. Not yet. We don't know that, she said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. We have to believe there's still a way out of this. They continued digging through old articles, scouring every corner of the internet for any mention of Anna's case. Most of the news clippings were sparse, with vague details about her disappearance, but finally they found something. A blog written by one of Anna's childhood friends. Lena clicked the link, her heart racing as the page loaded. The post was years old, written when the friend, Melanie, had been in college, but the raw emotion in her words was still palpable. I haven't talked about Anna in years, but I can't keep it bottled up anymore. No one ever believed us, not the police, not our parents, not anyone. But I know what happened. Anna didn't just disappear, she was taken. And I know it sounds crazy, but it's true. We played the game, Bloody Mary. It was supposed to be a joke, but after that night, things started happening. Weird things. Anna was the first to see her, in mirrors mostly. At first it was just a flash, a shadowy figure, a glimpse of something out of the corner of her eye. But then it got worse. She said Mary was getting closer, that she could see her more clearly, standing behind her, watching. We didn't believe her at first. We thought she was just freaking herself out. But then we all started seeing things too. Reflections that didn't match reality. Things moving when they shouldn't be. I'll never forget the last time I saw Anna. She was standing in front of the mirror in her bedroom, her face pale as a ghost. She said she was trying to talk to Mary, trying to figure out what she wanted, and then she was gone. Just like that. The mirror was shattered, and she was gone. I don't care if people think I'm crazy. I know what I saw. Bloody Mary is real, and if you call her, you're opening the door to something you can't control. Lena stared at the screen, her heart pounding in her chest. The words felt like they were written just for her, like they were a warning she should have heeded before it was too late. It's exactly the same, Noah muttered, leaning over her shoulder to read the blog. Emma saw her first. Then we all started seeing things. The mirrors, they're connected somehow. And Anna was trying to talk to her, Lena whispered, her throat tightening. What if Emma was doing the same thing? What if she tried to reach out to Bloody Mary just like Anna did? Noah sat back, his expression grim. That would explain why she was acting so weird before she disappeared. Maybe Emma thought she could control it, figure out what Mary wanted. Lena's heart raced. But she couldn't. Anna couldn't either. That's why they're both gone. Noah's hands clenched into fists. Then we need to stop thinking we can handle this on our own. If Bloody Mary really is using the mirrors, then we have to figure out a way to shut her out. Close the door before she takes someone else. Lena nodded, but her mind was already racing ahead. Maybe that's the key, the mirrors. If they're a portal, then breaking them could be part of it, but it didn't work for Anna. The mirror broke after she disappeared, not before. Exactly, Noah said, his voice growing more urgent. What if breaking the mirror doesn't stop it, but does the opposite? Maybe it opens the door wider. Lena's breath caught in her throat. That makes sense. The more the mirrors shatter, the more she can come through. Noah ran a hand through his hair, his face pale with realization. Which means every time one of us sees her, every time one of the mirrors cracks, she's getting closer. Lena felt the cold grip of fear tightening around her chest. Noah, if that's true, then we're running out of time, Noah finished, his voice barely above a whisper. Lena's hands shook as she closed the laptop, her mind spinning. The pieces were falling into place, but the picture they were creating was more terrifying than anything she'd expected. If Bloody Mary was using the mirrors as a gateway, then the broken glass wasn't just a sign of her presence, it was an invitation for her to come through. But what does she want? Lena asked, her voice shaking. Why does she take people? What is she trying to do? Noah stood up, pacing again, his frustration building. I don't know, but we have to stop her before she takes anyone else. We can't just sit around waiting for her to come for us. Lena bit her lip, her mind racing. Maybe we need to talk to Detective Williams again. He was there for Anna's case. Maybe he knows something we don't, something that could help us figure out how to stop this. Noah nodded, though his expression was still tense. Yeah, maybe, but we can't wait around for him to solve it for us. We have to take action now. Lena agreed, but deep down, she wasn't sure what action they could take. They knew more than they did before, but they were still in the dark about how to stop Bloody Mary, and every minute they wasted brought them closer to the edge. I'll call him, Lena said, pulling out her phone. Maybe he's found something, or maybe he has more information about Anna. She dialed Detective Williams's number, her fingers trembling as she waited for him to pick up. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Then it clicked. Lena. Williams's voice came through the line, rough but alert. I was just about to call you. Lena's heart pounded. Did you find something? There was a brief pause on the other end of the line, and when Williams spoke again, his voice was low, serious. We need to talk. I've been digging through some old files on Anna's case, and I found something you need to see. Lena's stomach dropped. What is it? Meet me at my office, Williams said, his tone leaving no room for argument. It's about the mirrors. I think we're dealing with something much bigger than just Bloody Mary. Lena hung up the phone, her hands trembling. What did he say? Noah asked, his eyes wide with worry. He found something, Lena whispered, her throat tight with fear. Something about the mirrors. Noah's expression darkened, and without another word, they grabbed their things and headed out the door. They needed answers, and they needed them fast. A message in the mirror. The sun had dipped below the horizon by the time Lena and Noah reached Detective Williams' office. The sky was streaked with dark clouds, the kind that warned of an impending storm. It felt like everything was building, the tension in the air mirroring the tension inside Lena's chest. Williams greeted them at the door, his face hard, eyes shadowed with exhaustion. He didn't waste time on small talk, ushering them into his small office with a quick glance over his shoulder, as though he expected something or someone to be watching. "Thanks for coming," he said, closing the door behind them and locking it with a soft click. "I found something in the files from Anna's case, something I think you need to see." Lena sat on the edge of a worn chair, her nerves on edge. Noah stood by the door, his arms crossed, his face etched with a mixture of frustration and fear. Williams walked over to his desk and pulled out a thick folder, flipping through the pages until he found what he was looking for. He slid a photo across the desk toward Lena. It was a picture of a broken mirror, the shards glittering on the floor like jagged pieces of ice. But that wasn't what caught Lena's attention. It was the message scrawled on the cracked surface of the mirror, barely visible through the shattered glass. 4 simple words, written in something dark and wet, like condensation or blood. "She's with me now." Lena's stomach lurched, a wave of nausea rising in her throat. What? What is this?" Williams leaned back, his face grim. "This was taken the day after Anna disappeared. One of her friends found it in her bedroom right after she vanished. The police dismissed it as a prank, but the friend swore it hadn't been there the night before, and the message—" He trailed off, his eyes locking onto Lena's. "It's not the first time I've seen it." Lena's heart pounded in her chest. "What do you mean?" Williams sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. "After you told me about Emma, I started looking through old case files, anything that might be connected to Bloody Mary or similar urban legends, and I found several reports of people disappearing after playing the game. In almost every case, someone reported seeing that same message." Noah moved closer, his brow furrowed. "So this thing, Bloody Mary or whatever it is, leaves a message?" Williams nodded. "It's like a signature or a claim. She's with me now. It appears after someone goes missing, as if the entity is confirming its hold on the person. It's a warning to anyone who's left." Lena's hands were trembling as she stared at the photo, her mind racing. "She's with me now. Emma, Anna, and who knew how many others." "Why didn't the police take this seriously?" Lena asked, her voice shaking. "Why didn't they see the connection?" "They didn't believe in anything supernatural," Williams said, his voice rough. "To them, these were just runaway cases or tragic accidents. No one wanted to consider the possibility that something paranormal was involved. Even when the evidence was right in front of them, they looked the other way." Lena's stomach churned. She understood now why Williams had been so determined to help, why he had clung to Anna's case for all these years. He had seen the truth, but no one had listened. Noah, still standing beside her, ran a hand through his hair. "Okay, so this thing is leaving messages. But what does it want? Why does it take people?" William sighed again, looking at the two of them with a weariness that spoke of years spent chasing shadows. "That's the question, isn't it? I don't know what it wants. All I know is that it's been happening for a long time, and the more it takes, the stronger it seems to get." Lena's throat tightened. "So what do we do? How do we stop it?" Williams paused, his face grim. "I don't know if we can stop it, but I think there's a way to keep it from taking more people. The mirrors, it's all connected to the mirrors. I've been reading about how certain spirits can use reflective surfaces as portals, ways to travel between our world and theirs. If we can find a way to block that portal, maybe we can cut off its access." "Block it how?" Noah asked, his voice tense. Williams leaned forward, his voice low. "There are rituals, symbols, things that can seal a mirror or trap a spirit inside. I've seen it in some of the older folklore I've been reading, but it's risky. If we do it wrong, we could make things worse." Lena's mind was spinning. She wanted to believe that there was a way to fight back, a way to stop whatever had taken Emma, but the idea of performing some kind of ritual terrified her. What if they did something wrong? What if they made things worse? "How do we know it'll work?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "We don't," William said, his voice grave, "but it's the best chance we've got." The weight of his words hung in the air, thick and oppressive. Lena felt the fear pressing down on her, the sense that time was running out, that whatever they did, it had to be soon. Bloody Mary, or whatever was behind the mirrors, was getting stronger, and they were running out of time. Noah broke the silence, his voice quiet but determined. "Then we'll do it. We'll try the ritual, whatever it takes." Lena's breath caught in her throat, a mix of fear and relief flooding her chest. They had a plan. It was dangerous, risky, but it was something. "Okay," she said, nodding slowly. "We'll do it." William stood up, pulling a piece of paper from his desk and handing it to Lena. "These are the symbols you'll need. Draw them on the mirror you're trying to seal, but be careful. If you see her, don't look her in the eyes, and whatever you do, don't say her name." Lena took the paper, her hands trembling as she stared at the strange, twisting symbols drawn on it. They looked old, ancient, like something pulled from a forgotten time. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice heavy with the weight of what was to come. Williams gave her a solemn nod. "Be careful. This thing, it's more powerful than you think." Later that night, back at home, Lena stood in front of her bathroom mirror, staring at her reflection. The paper with the symbols was clutched tightly in her hand, but she hadn't drawn them yet. Her breath came in shallow bursts, her heart pounding in her chest as the fear settled over her like a cold, suffocating blanket. She couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her. Lena reached out, touching the mirror with the tips of her fingers, the cool glass smooth beneath her skin. For a moment everything was still, quiet. But then slowly, fog began to spread across the surface of the mirror. Condensation, forming from nowhere. Lena's heart froze. She watched in horror as the mist gathered, swirling across the glass, and then, slowly, letters began to appear, written in the condensation, as if an invisible hand were tracing them from the other side. "She's with me now." Lena's breath caught in her throat, her body trembling. The words stared back at her, taunting her, mocking her. She stumbled backward, the paper with the symbols crumpling in her hand. The mirror reflected only her wide, terrified eyes, but the message lingered, hanging in the air like a final warning. "She's with me now. Emma. Anna. And if they didn't act fast, someone else would be next." Lena turned and ran from the bathroom, her heart pounding, the echoes of the message chasing her through the darkened halls of her house. Descent into madness. Lena's pulse thundered in her ears as she slammed her bedroom door shut, the echo of the message from the mirror still burning in her mind. She stood there, gasping for breath, her back pressed against the door, as if that alone could keep out the creeping dread that had settled over her life. The words, "She's with me now," were carved into her thoughts, a brand that refused to fade. Her phone buzzed on her nightstand, pulling her back into the moment. It was Noah. "Noah, still wrapping your head around what William said?" Lena stared at the message, her hands trembling as she typed a reply. "Lena, I tried the ritual, but something happened." "Lena, the message, it showed up on my mirror. She's with me now." A few seconds passed before Noah's response came in. "Noah, what? Are you serious?" Lena's chest tightened. "Lena, yeah, it's getting worse, Noah. We have to do the ritual, but I don't know if it'll work. I don't know if we're too late." Noah's reply came almost immediately. "Noah, we're not too late. We can still do this. We have to, for Emma." Lena swallowed hard, trying to calm the panic building inside her. She wanted to believe him, wanted to believe they could still fix this, still save Emma. But the deeper they went, the more it felt like the shadows were closing in, like Bloody Mary was playing a game they could never win. A knock on her door startled her out of her thoughts. "Lena?" her mom's voice called from the other side. "Are you all right? I thought I heard you running." Lena froze, unsure of what to say. The last thing she needed was her mom asking too many questions, especially when she was already so close to unraveling. "I'm fine," Lena called back, forcing her voice to sound steady. "Just had a bad dream." Her mom hesitated for a moment, then sighed. "Okay, well, if you need anything, I'm right here." "Thanks," Lena replied, her voice quieter now. She waited until her mom's footsteps faded down the hallway before letting out a shaky breath. She couldn't let anyone else get involved. This was too dangerous, too real. Her mom wouldn't understand. No one would. Only Noah and Rachel knew the truth, and even they were barely hanging on. The thought of Rachel made Lena's heart tighten. She hadn't spoken to her since the collapse at school, and the fear of what Rachel had seen in that window still lingered like a dark cloud. Rachel was fragile, already breaking under the weight of whatever curse they'd unleashed. If she saw another reflection, like the one she'd seen before, Lena wasn't sure Rachel would survive it. And what about Noah? He was trying to stay strong, trying to be the rational one, but Lena could see the cracks forming. He wasn't sleeping. He was just as terrified as she was, even if he didn't want to admit it. They were all fraying at the edges, and Bloody Mary was pulling at the loose threads. Lena sat down on her bed, her mind spinning. The symbols Detective Williams had given them were supposed to help, but could they really seal the mirror? Could they really trap Bloody Mary? The old legends were full of vague answers and half-truths, and they had no guarantees that the ritual would work. But they had to try. Her phone buzzed again. It was Noah. "Noah, we should meet at Rachel's tomorrow, do the ritual there. She's been seeing things, and if we don't act fast, I'm scared she's next." Lena's heart clenched at the thought of Rachel. She was barely holding on, and if Bloody Mary came for her, she typed quickly, "Lena, okay, tomorrow, we'll do it." She tossed the phone on her bed and stared at the crumpled paper with the symbols still clutched in her hand. They were supposed to protect them, but the weight of responsibility pressed down on her like a physical force. What if they got it wrong? What if it didn't work? What if they made everything worse? Lena shook her head, trying to focus. We have no choice, she reminded herself. It was either try the ritual or let Bloody Mary take them one by one. Her thoughts drifted back to Emma, her once vibrant friend, now just a ghostly memory. Emma had been the one to push them into this, to dare them to play the game, but she didn't deserve to be trapped on the other side of the mirror. No one did. Lena stood up, walking back toward the bathroom. She didn't want to look at the mirror again, but she had to know if the message was still there. If the writing in the condensation had faded, maybe it was a sign that they still had time. Maybe the ritual could work. She opened the bathroom door slowly, her heart racing as she stepped inside. The light was dim, casting eerie shadows along the walls. Her eyes moved to the mirror. The message was gone. The condensation had dried, leaving no trace of the words that had haunted her only moments ago. Lena exhaled slowly, but her relief was short-lived. She knew what she had seen. The message was real. Bloody Mary had left it as a warning. And now, more than ever, Lena knew they were running out of time. The next morning, Lena woke from a fitful sleep, her dreams plagued by images of Emma standing just behind the glass, her reflection twisted and broken. The day stretched out in front of her like a yawning abyss, the hours blending together in a haze of dread and anticipation. The thought of the ritual hung over her like a storm cloud. By the time she arrived at Rachel's house, her stomach was in knots. Noah was already there, pacing outside near the front door, his face drawn and tense. Rachel hadn't come to school again, and the weight of her absence had been suffocating. "How is she?" Lena asked as she approached. Noah shook his head, his expression grim. "Not good. She hasn't left her room. Her mom said she's been acting strange, talking to herself. I don't know how much more of this she can take." Lena swallowed hard, guilt creeping up her spine. She should have been there for Rachel sooner, should have done something before it got this bad. But now, all they could do was hope that the ritual would work. "Let's get this over with," Noah said, heading inside. Lena followed, her heart pounding with every step. They found Rachel in her room, sitting on the edge of her bed, staring at the covered mirror in the corner. She looked pale, her eyes red and puffy, her hands trembling in her lap. "Rachel," Lena whispered, sitting beside her. "We're going to help you, okay? We're going to stop this." Rachel didn't respond at first, her eyes still fixed on the covered mirror. "She's in there," she whispered, her voice barely audible. She keeps watching me. I can feel her. Every time I close my eyes, she's closer. Lena's chest tightened. We're going to seal the mirror. She won't be able to hurt you. We just need to do this ritual, and it'll be over. Rachel looked at her, her eyes filled with fear. What if it doesn't work? Noah stepped forward, his voice firm. It will. We're not going to let her take you. Lena unfolded the crumpled paper with the symbols, her hands shaking as she placed it on Rachel's desk. The weight of what they were about to do pressed down on her, but there was no turning back now. They began drawing the symbols on the mirror's cover, their fingers moving carefully over the fabric. The room was tense, the air thick with anticipation. Every brush of the pen felt like a step closer to something they couldn't fully understand. As the last symbol was drawn, Lena felt a shift in the atmosphere. The room grew colder, the shadows in the corners deepening, and the silence became almost unbearable. She glanced at Noah, who was staring at the mirror, his face pale. It's done, Lena whispered, her voice barely audible. Now what? Noah didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the mirror, and a chill ran down Lena's spine as she followed his gaze. For a brief moment she saw it, a flicker of movement, a shadow behind the glass, and then a faint, twisted smile. Thank you for joining us on this journey beyond the mirror, The Curse of Bloody Mary, written by Galen Pierce Tate and narrated by 11 Labs AI Text-to-Speech. If you enjoyed this audiobook and want to stay connected for more thrilling stories and immersive experiences, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit the bell icon so you'll be the first to know when new audiobooks and content are released. We appreciate your support, and we can't wait to bring you even more adventures. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the unknown.